man, I love your new record. I know you knew I was gonna say that, but
Thanks, man.
it's just so cool. I just feel like it's even, um, I don't know, the compositions have just gotten even deeper. You know what I mean? Were there any, or were they all originals this time?
Yeah, this time it's all originals. Um, over the last couple of years with shifting gears kind of career-wise and not touring as much because of COVID and everything, it allowed me to kind of expand more technically. And also, for all of us, of course, but for different degrees, it was a tough couple of years. A lot happened personally. So it was the sort of thing where, you when that happens, what can you do more than just honor the process even more? Very fortunate that music is in my life. Very fortunate that whatever abilities I have on the bass, I'm able to say something with it. So I really try to honor that. So whatever's happening, let's do something with it. Let's like turn it into something and make me feel better. Um, I've been really reflecting a lot over the last few years on the validating the symbiosis, like the nature of being a performer and of just being an artist in any way. And when things happen, being able to say something with it and have a someone either listening to it on an album or in the audience and have them get something out of it. For me, that's what it's all about. There's nothing more meaningful than that, in a way. So with that state of mind, that's how I really approached the songs. If I reached a certain moment where I was like, nah, it's good enough, I was like, no, it's not good enough. Are you aligned with the state of mind that you initially were writing the composition with? No? Okay, well then let's sit on it for a little bit. Let's come back to it when you're kind of there again, so that this song could really grow in the way it was supposed to. It's almost like if you look at creating as more of an excavation sometimes than a creation, or somewhere in between the two. If the song is kind of can't exist in its ultimate form, how can you best excavate it? The conditions have to be in the right way for that to happen. So yeah, so all the songs kind of went through that process.
So you naturally kind of just waited for those emotions to come back over you. Are you talking emotionally or just creativity wise?
Well, I guess both. You know, um, I guess I feel like when I'm in a certain state, that it's almost like the creative side is ignited, like at the same time, and that doesn't mean when I'm super sad or super happy, then it just naturally gets ignited. But there's a certain quality of state where um, the emotion mixes with it, and it's like, okay, I have to pick up the bass right now. I don't know what else to do, but do it, and most of the songs I think have a little bit of a bittersweet kind of sound to them. Some are a little bit more uplifting, some are a little darker. A lot of them have moments where they're one or the other. Um, so yeah, it really was the sort of thing where, I mean, part of it was a lot of it was unconscious, but sometimes it was like a conscious decision to just not even pick it up if I'm not there. I pick it up and play and work on technical stuff, do something else. But um, yeah, it was a thing that hypothetically I'd always wanted to do, but you know how it is. You book time in a studio, and then that's your time. No matter what state of mind you're in, no matter what energy level you have, whatever, that's your time. Let's nail it during that, you know. And yeah, I really liked just what it felt right walking over to the computer, plugging into my own situation, and
Yeah.
really doing my very, very best to see the song through.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's what I was going to ask if recording it on your own was a factor of the pandemic, or if it was like a conscious choice. But it sounds like you just wanted to take the time for yourself.
Yeah, well, it was more opportunistic. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, here I am. We're not touring. I'd always wanted to dig more into, you know, um, uh, trying to figure out how to record myself. I knew literally nothing. Never even used GarageBand. So, yeah, my phrase for the first 6 to 8 months of quarantine with a DAW was, "Why do you call it Logic? There's nothing logical about this. What do you mean? This button should do this. Obviously, I'm looking for this." So, yeah, I get very, very angry with technology in general, just as a fault of mine, but especially when I really care. I really need to see something. Yeah.
That's great, man. Well, I mean, like, what kind of did you pick up any tricks, or like, what did your process end up being like for recording?
Well, yeah, I mean, my setup is really modest. I have a PreSonus interface, and I did with Consider the Source. They came and stayed with me when I was living down in Asheville, that's where I was living for about a year during the beginning of quarantine. The engineer that we worked with we did like everyone just stayed at my house and we set up the house to record in it. And he was a bass player and he had a tube DI called a Fat Boy. A Tear Garden makes it. Unbelievable, unbelievable tone. Loved it. So I ended up picking one up. So now I have, my bass goes into the Fat Boy, goes into the PreSonus, goes into Logic. Um, so all the songs were recorded just like that. I changed the reverb settings on each tune a little bit here and there, depending on, maybe the busyness of what I was doing. But yeah, I kind of wanted all the songs, even though they have a different, emotional tone or different, a different kind of tapping technique or whatever it was that I was doing. I wanted them to also just exist together and have the same, have something tonally similar with all of them. So, that actually made it really easy, and which is great because I don't know anything about this. I don't know what I'm doing whatsoever. If even a microphone was put into the mix, I would be rendered catatonic in frustration. But so it was nice in that way, to just be able to sit there and go for it. I also spent a lot of time getting to know, how to program drums, MIDI drums in Logic, and do some panning and stuff like that. On the album, I have like a bonus track. Did I send you that too?
Yeah, I was checking that out.
All
That's
right,
what
cool.
I almost wasn't sure if that was your buddies there on it or if that was just all you.
Yeah, no, that was all. Well, not me playing it. That was all me programming it.
Yeah.
So I let a friend of mine stay with me down in Asheville who was a really good engineer. And so, we kind of bartered. He was having a rough time and we sort of bartered where he can just stay with me if he teaches me how to use Logic. So he really taught me how to do all this stuff. But then I kind of just ran with it. And so, yeah, that song is, so later this year, I'm going to release another album that's stuff more like that, more fully composed, and all the melodic and harmonic stuff that you're hearing, or 99% of it is all on the bass using an EBow or using a slide or for the melodies or just playing them straight up. And then just recording layers, panning them in different ways, trying to see what I could do just on the bass itself to separate the tones, go, some parts back pickup, sometimes front pickup, heavy on one frequency or another. So it was a really fun, it still is a really fun experiment to see how those can all fit. And the idea is for that album, I thought I should talk too much about it now, but is tapping has become so important to my process now as a composer. It's not just fun to do it and play it and see where the songs could go, but with that song Riches to the Conjurer, it's a really I really enjoy playing it just as a solo piece, but the idea is that all of those voices can hint at other parts. Not the most novel idea. Pianists have been doing this for however, but however long. But the idea is that it could function in the same way. You can use tapping to compose in a more fleshed out context. And tapping in the first place was that for me. It was just, I have an idea for melody. I have an idea for a bass part or a chord progression or something. Let me very awkwardly try to figure out how to hear the bass with the melody and see where it goes. And then over time, develop some chops with it. But now it's like, it's how I write. I can't not write with either tapping or at least chordal, bass playing in some form. But then it's really interesting to see what of that initial tapping idea you'll keep, and then what will you divvy out to other instruments or other voices. So the next album, that's where this album is kind of leading in a way. Is here are some tapping compositions that can exist self-contained. Here are some ways you can flesh them out.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's been a really exciting process. I really, really enjoy it. I feel like it's so helpful, and through teaching for the last couple of years, during quarantine, the online lessons have really done well because everyone's home, and especially in the beginning, spending their their government money on whatever their hobby is. So I've been really fortunate in that, my online lessons have been doing really well through teaching specifically this process to a lot of people. It's sort of it's had a nice return to see that it's it's not just me. Like a lot of my students are coming up with unbelievable ideas, really, really cool things, and teaching me things through the whole process. So it's been really nice.
It just seems like, I don't know, the tapping thing has, when I listen to it, and you mentioned that in the press release, but it really is like a solo piano piece. It really sounds like just something else. When you were just mentioning about like fleshing things out, I was like a couple times, it's like, this would be like a string quartet. This is like, this is like a Haydn string quartet or something that that would be like happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's at some point in my life, I was just joking about this recently. With Emily, with my girlfriend, it's like I feel like every musician gets to a point in their career where they have to do the orchestra thing. Like Avishai Cohen, recently, like one of his more recent albums, it's like all these old compositions that he had that are like, from his vamp band or from like, earlier on in his career. And I'm like, of course, now you have a full ass orchestra doing it. And then, but I think to myself, like, man, it would be really cool. I could have like a cello, and I could have an upright bass do this part, and
yeah, that would be totally badass.
It would be so cool.
I feel like there's enough like string quartets and like chamber groups out there. If you just like wrote the piece out for them, someone would premiere it if you wanted to do that. You know what I mean?
That would be cool. It's an area of music I know nothing about. I wouldn't even know how to approach people about it, but I would absolutely love to do that. I worked with there's a comic book illustrator who she used to be a bass student of mine, and I didn't know this when I was teaching her, but apparently she's like a badass vocalist also. And so she's working on a comic book now, and her idea is to put songs to each issue. And so we've been collaborating on the songs, and she took one of my original solo bass compositions, Pluto Was a Planet, and wrote lyrics to it and wrote a melody to it, and then had the idea of including a cellist. And yeah, it was really, really nice hearing cello along with that piece. It was like, yeah, like in the back of my mind, this is often going on, this kind of texture, It was really nice to see it. So yeah, I think I'll do it one day. But yeah. I have to be careful to not get too ambitious in a short period of time. I tell my students all the time, especially a few of them, like, you're being too ambitious for your own good. I know, because that's how I've been, and I've had to tailor that, because nothing will get done if you think too big in too short an amount of time. So yeah,
100%. I feel like that's a big musician thing, especially. It's just like, that's cool. I'm gonna go straight for it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a balancing act. We can't lose it. We shouldn't lose it, but we have to be mature about it and learn whatever that means to us. How do we approach that? How do we not lose the excitement? But I have one student who's I'm so proud of him. He's doing amazing, but he was a professional soccer player for most of his life. Total badass, and then for whatever reason stopped doing it. Starts picking up bass. Never really played any instrument, and the progress he's made because he knows how to learn from soccer is unbelievable. But I had to have a talk with him at one point and say, look, man, you're trying to learn Jocko pieces. You just started playing. You're trying to learn, all these things, and you should do your best with all these things, but you can't do 17. You can't learn 17 techniques. You're still learning how to read. You're still learning how to navigate the modes and learn the fretboard. We'll get there. But and he's adjusting. He's figuring it out. But we all have to do that. We all have to figure out how to tailor that excitement.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. The right word for that is maturity,
Yeah.
Just to know what's best for yourself and to accept it.
Accept it. You're absolutely right. It's a big part of it. It's a big part of the whole thing.
Yeah, man. So with the tapping, I know I saw about the, kind of doing the drone idea, which was on the perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps everything. I always forget. I even forget.
Okay.
Everything, perhaps nothing.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's such a cool idea. Were there any other little technical things that came up in writing this album that people should listen for?
Yeah, well, so the general concept of droning notes but making them rhythmically, interesting is a theme on a few songs. One of the songs that I'll release in a bit, called The Gnome and the Skeleton, I had initially named it Counterfeit Worlds, which I love. It's a quote from Westworld. I already named a song that and put it on an album and completely forgot. So yeah, very quickly.
Counterfeit Love 2.
Submit the song.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend and I, one of us said that, and we were like, yeah, that's it. That's the one. But anyway, that song has a similar concept where we have something relatively simple melodically, but finding different ways to replicate the same notes on different strings, mixing it with the idea of subdividing, right? So you take smaller numbers to create bigger numbers. And what I love about that, and I got this from studying Indian music and different Eastern European rhythms and Middle Eastern rhythms, is we can demystify that pedestal thing that we do with odd time signature playing. We could demystify it and make it simple and make it groovable if we break them into smaller chunks. So like something that's in 7, if we don't say, oh no, it's in 7, let me count to 7 over and over again. If instead we count to 1, 2, and then 1, 2 again, and then 1, 2, 3, that we have a groove that does this, and that you don't have to think about what that is. You're just grooving to those marker moments, dot, dot, dot. So if we find these small chunks and acknowledge that within each of those little chunks of time, we can do whatever we want, there's so much freedom there. We don't even have to think of it in 7 anymore. It doesn't matter. It just happens to add up if you're looking at it into being in 7. You could do 9. You could do 11. You could do all of these things. You can even do 4. That's really syncopated and weird, if you just figure out what the formula. And a lot of the times that comes down to listening less and feeling more. Just like where is my body moving when this happens? So it's this kind of zooming in and zooming out process of, okay, here are these here's this cool way of expressing something. How can I organize smaller numbers to create an overarching time signature? And then figure out what that is afterwards, kind of, and then see what else you can do within that overarching thing once you've figured out the scaffolding to get there. So that's the theme on the album, rhythmically at least. It's finding different ways of under the umbrella of tapping, where you can explore larger numbers via smaller numbers. Yeah, so a handful of songs have that. There's a technique. I did not come up with this one. I've seen some other players do it, but where you take your thumb and you rest it kind of like on one of the strings towards the back pickup, and then you pluck it, and it makes like a woodblock kind of, cutting sound. So I dug a lot more into that idea. So each string has its own like woodblock sounding pitch, and depending on where you mute, you get, it'll slightly change. And you can also kind of mess with it and get a little bit more fancy with it, with other ways of getting muted plucks. It's very difficult to talk about. It's much easier to just play it. But there's a couple of songs where I utilize this percussive element while tapping with the left hand. And the idea is, because each string has its own kind of woodblocky rhythmic sound, if you just steer clear of those strings that you're tapping melodies on or chords on, you can have kind of like a backbeat going the whole time. So the third song, Just Don't Look, and the middle section of Riches to the Conjurer has that. It has, tapping melodies with the left, getting working on different rhythms that you can get with the right hand, and having them coexist. Sometimes linearly, sometimes they'll coincide. At that point, you're using the same mental coordination mechanisms that you would when you're tapping, but the right hand isn't tapping; it's just doing that instead. Okay. So it sounds more complicated than it is in a way. It's sort of like taking under the surface, taking the same mental things that you can derive, you could figure out with the coordination in one area, and just repurposing them in a bunch of different ways. You learn one idea, and then you just get really creative with what you can do with that one idea.
Yeah, well, I had on my notes to ask if Just Don't Look had overdubbing, because it just sounds like two separate. It sounds like it shouldn't be able to happen on one bass.
Well, that's the thing. It's when you spend a lot of just focused time looking at something and have the mindset of, this can be done. We can figure this out. Might not be figured out in the way you initially thought or wanted to, but there is a way. There always is a way. That's one of the coolest things. So the idea is, it's a lot of troubleshooting. You get like the beginning idea, and you say, okay, like the opening line is a 9 chord, right? Root 5th 9th. A chord I'm dangerously close to overusing. But right, so I'm playing that chord on the D, G, and C strings. So the A string is up for grabs. So the A string wood block sound. So that whole part is the whole A section of that is played with the wood blocky, plucky sound on the A string. The melody being played on the other 3 strings. I kind of like drone an open D for the second chord. Right? You just fling the open D string open while you're hitting that chord, and that way the A string is still untouched. You don't have to do anything with it. You can still just keep that same consistent snare, backbeat, whatever you want to consider it, sound. And then the B section happens, and I have to repurpose, because there I need the A string. So now if you listen, that wood blocky sound changes. It gets higher. It's because I'm now using a different string to execute that sound. So it's planning. It's figuring out, and then just rehearsing the hell out of it until it's where it's supposed to be. And if you look at if you look closely enough, you break things down to like their basic parts, slow it down, it's all easy. It really is. Not to sound like, I always hate when you hear someone do something and you're like, oh yeah, it's real easy. But it's easy in that it's just, if you look at it for long enough with this state of mind of I can figure this out, you really can. It doesn't mean it's quick. It doesn't mean it doesn't require a lot of effort. You have to spend there for as long as you need to get it done. But the process, of just punching numbers. All right, that string, I can't use that one anymore. How about this one? Oh yeah, I could do this with this. Okay, there you go. You just have to spend time doing it. That's the thing.
It sounds like you just have a lot of patience.
I do. I with this, I do.
Logic, not with logic, but with a...
And certainly not with logic. Certainly not. Yeah, I become a very different human being. But I love the process. I love the process of figuring out, of hearing the idea and spending the time doing it. I really love it. I get so much meaning out of it. I learn so much from it. I learn so much about just life, just the importance of being patient and the reward of employing that patience and that love for something and seeing where it can go. At the end of the day, listening back to the songs and saying, I'm proud of this. I'm glad I took that extra time to do that. Why do anything? It's like, what better way to spend your time? If you're really interested in something and derive that much enjoyment out of it, what better way? So yeah, I really do love the process. It doesn't mean I don't scream and curse at my instrument and myself sometimes, but even that, even the frustration of that, and then rebounding from it, and at the end of the day, recording it, that's what loving a particular aspect of life is. It's those ups and downs. If you didn't have them, you couldn't love it as much. So yeah, so patience there.
Yeah.
There. Yeah, because I've learned that the payoff is big.
Yeah, man. Well, it's certainly worked out. Your playing's amazing, dude. Your compositions, I just feel like it just keeps getting better. It's crazy.
Thank you, man.
That
really means a lot. Coming from you especially, that means a lot.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say that I thought was really cool is the continuity in album covers.
Yeah. I decided that for all my solo albums, that's going to be the theme.
That's awesome, because it just reminded me of like almost like a Blue Note, like, it's got like the set,
Yeah, and not that the songs sound particularly retro, but I like the idea of it being more like a 70s looking record, kind of
or like ECM or something, like how the labels have like that same kind of look. Pablo records all kind of look the same. You're right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and I enjoyed. The first one was just this place that we were recording. For some reason, he had all these little statues outside, and I was like, taking a picture of that. This is hysterical. And then I was like, that'll be a great album cover. And another theme for me is just I've been really, really, really focused on shedding any element of my playing and just in my life that's led by ego, and focusing more on really what makes me happy and what's important to me. So, these songs, I feel like I dug deeper and took extra time and extra care to make them as good as they could be. But even with the album cover, it's like I have my girlfriend on it. I have, Finn, the family dog, in it, and I have all these elements that are just part of our apartment, part of our life in it. And these songs, even though like the some of the next album stuff, that's the more full band stuff, I kind of wrote a lot of those before this album. A lot of these songs were either conceived of or finished in the last year since I've lived here. And so it's more personal, this is my life is very different now. These are elements of it in this picture. So it's almost painting more of an accurate story, the songs and the album cover, of like, where I'm currently at in my life, and the things that I've learned and the things that matter. So, and it's also just, I'm a silly dude.
Yeah.
That too,
Yeah.
We had a hell of a time getting Finn, the dog, to sit still. You can't see it, but I have a piece of cheese on my lap. He's like staring at it. We got literally one picture of him looking like he's behaving for in seconds.
Can you give me the scoop on Consider the Source too?
Yeah, of course.
Like, what's going on?
So what's going on? So we released our first hybrid album, which is half acoustic instruments, half electric. And that's a thing we've been doing for years. We would do them like at festivals in just like a pop-up informal kind of way. And it developed a little bit of we developed a reputation for doing that, and people started enjoying the song. So we started sprinkling hybrid sets throughout our mainly the festivals that we would play. We would do like an acoustic hybrid one, and then our normal electric set. So this is the first time we decided, let's make an actual album that's intended to be that kind of experience. So on that one, I play my Federa, but I also play a Kala U bass, and I play a gold tone banjo bass. Played a little bit of upright, which I don't play at all.
Oh, okay.
And literally, like, it was you especially would you would laugh at me because you play upright, but I don't at all. Terrible at it. And I was trying to learn how to bow because I really wanted the texture at the beginning of one of these songs that I'm inevitable. And I literally had to have him punch me in on every freaking note. I'll be honest. Let's be honest here. I have no idea what I'm doing, but it came out sounding really nice. But yeah, so the songs are a bit different, but also us. There's a lot of improvising. They're odd time signatures. Some of them sound like how we would normally sound. Some of them sound much more stripped down and much more like folky. And it came out sounding really good. We're really proud of it. It was quite a process recording that album. We had a lot of weird occurrences happen, like a crowbar falling off of a truck and giving us a flat tire on the way to day one recording. And I'm like changing the tire on the side of the BQE and very, very busy time and area of New York. And then the next day, a tree falls down in front of the studio and power lines go out. We have to like go and get generator protection. So yeah, it was an adventure. It was an adventure. But the whole time we were saying, this is part of it. This is the story of this album. We're gonna have these crazy things happen. And then it in a weird way, I guess, kind of theme like what I was saying before. In the craziness of the whole process, once we're there recording, it heightened us. There's a song on the album called "Song for Robert," which is one I used to play with my dad when I was younger. And it was we would just kind of casually play it. It wasn't even a full-on song at that point. It was just like a chord progression I had developed and a melody. And hearing Gabe play that melody and him solo over that song, and we're in like a hangar kind of environment in the studio. Throw open the hangars, crickets. We're in the middle of the woods. Beautiful, like one of my favorite recording experiences ever. Just having that kind of environment and just hearing it all come together in a very organic setting after juxtaposed with the craziness of the whole experience. Unbelievable. It was really, really, really great. And it's also nice to we all made a conscious decision to kind of tone it down a little bit, with not as many overdubs, not as crazy of sounds or of even the way we would attack the strings. So it was nice to explore a softer, more delicate, more nuanced side of us, you know, tailored more towards like a seated audience that isn't as rambunctious, you know, more introspective. And you know, when we start doing the solo shows, which we have coming up very soon, we're doing only a few of them, but but the idea is to make each one very, very special. You know, we're going to ask people to not have cell phones out, to be quiet. Let's all, you know, just have a musical, symbiotic kind of experience where we're feeling what you're feeling what we're feeling, and that's what it really is. It's, you know, like, you know, you mentioned the Blue Note before. My favorite musical experiences of my life, where I was going to a show or going to you know, see something, was at the Blue Note or at the Vanguard. And you're going to see whatever, you know, Chick Corea or the Bad Plus or you know, whoever, and you're just there. You're just listening and watching them and closing your eyes sometimes, opening your eyes sometimes. You're not on your phone. You're not, you know, getting smashed at the bar. You're just listening to these people bare their souls to you and their whole life of you know, sculpting their bodies in whatever way to do this thing, and shedding whatever levels of ego that they have to shed to express via those technical abilities. It was just the most beautiful thing from childhood until life still. You know, when I'm watching music in that environment, it's the best. It's the most unbelievable, you know, validating experience. And so we also realize that because we're all from more of that background, you know, and we found ourselves straddling the progressive rock and the jam scenes. The jam scene doesn't really understand that as much, and this isn't a value judgment. It's just they don't. You go to a jam scene show, and it's a crazy. Everyone's dancing, everyone's up, and everyone's drinking or on some whatever they're doing, and having a great time and having a great experience, but not that kind of experience. It's the music ranges from, in a lot of ways, I guess it's more peripheral. It's more like hand in hand with the general experience, not the experience itself. So we kind of want to expose our fans to that, to get to know us. Like, this is what we're really about. These are our songs. These are the way that we really want to play them, and the way we like to at least give you the opportunity to hear them just like this. And then, you know, over the summer we'll do festivals, and it'll be a, you know, crazy off the wall, everyone's doing their thing experience again, and we'll have a great time doing that too. But it's very important to us that we're able to play these songs with the full range of you know, dynamics in all sense of the word, you know, musically, emotionally, all of it. So that's a huge theme of this body of work.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Are you worried that there's going to be a little bit of ruckus at any of these seated shows?
You know, I know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
but the idea is let's get it started to let people know that there's going to be two sides of us, and you'll get something out of it. You know, like I'm sure that it's going to happen. I'm sure it's going to happen with like a close friend of ours. I'm sure they're going to be at the show, and they're going to, you know, I have one student friend of mine who I know what he's going to say. I know he's going to scream out one particular word at the worst time. He does it every single time he sees us, no matter what the environment. I know it. But I think over time people will understand the importance and the and just the experience of that, and the rewarding nature of it will make sense over time, you know. And yeah, we're just very excited to do it. We're very excited to explore this other side of us. We've talked about it for years. We really think the album came out sounding really good. You know, we had some really good engineers that helped us with the tracking and with the mixing. and yeah, took a lot of risks. Oh, but one I guess geeky bass thing that I like, that I guess I'll leave with this. The banjo bass, which I love, and especially in Consider the Source, because it has such a short attack. You hit the note and it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it has like this kind of almost like tinny kind of sound to it. It sounds really cool when you play harmonics on it and mix it with, fretted notes. So, like for example, that song I mentioned before, a song for Robert. The beginning of the song is harmonics and bass notes, and with just a little bit of reverb, they just sound so beautiful, so ghostly. And then you hit the note, and the bassiness of the note stays, but the attack is there and gone. And it's just such a cool, touch and go kind of tone. Like it leaves a really interesting impression on the ears, So I like exploring all the different ways that bass specifically could be utilized. I don't use it for a lot of other things, but the way it exists in Consider the Source in that environment it's like meant to be. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, that's volume 1. Is volume 2 done, or is that just kind of like someday we're gonna do this again?
It's gonna be more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, it's been it's like we've gotten a reputation like Tool, where it's like, every decade you'll hear about an album and then we'll put one out. But now we're going to be putting things out more frequently. Not that I'm going to get into it too much, but the next album will likely be back to electric in a very us sounding, but different and produced very differently kind of way. We're very, very, very excited about it. This is the one I was talking about that we recorded down in Asheville. We'll make an official announcement about that soon, but the next thing we do is likely going to be more in that realm before we release volume 2.
Yeah.
But it's definitely on the radar. There's already songs being worked on for volume 2, very loosely. But this other album is already tracked and in the process of being mixed and produced. We're working with a producer for the first time who's very seasoned, and we're very excited about that too.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.